Welcome back to Sera's Werewolf Romance collection, where the alphas are fiercely possessive and the heroines bite back. Quick question for the pack before we dive into today's chaos. Where are you listening from right now? Let me know in the comments, and drop a pig emoji if your pet is currently judging your audiobook choices. Today we have a special one. It's funny, it's tense, and the chemistry is off the charts. To set the stage, our heroine is a no-nonsense human contractor called in for an emergency repair at a luxury penthouse. The damage? Deep, jagged claw marks tearing through solid oak walls. Her new client is a towering billionaire who is hiding a very dangerous, furry secret. But before we start, if you want to support the channel and get early access to stories like this, hit that join button down below. It helps us keep the lights on and the stories coming. Now, take a deep breath. The contractor is here, and this alpha is in serious trouble. Let's read. Chapter 1. The elevator doors slid open with a soft ping. Ruby stepped out onto the top floor of the tallest building in Silver Pine. Her work boots thudded against the premium marble floor. She paused, letting out a low whistle. The penthouse carried a steep, six-figure repair bill, and one glance at the luxury around her proved why. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the cloudy city skyline. Imported Italian leather sofas anchored the main sitting area. Every detail screamed wealth. Ruby had parked her pearlescent plum crossover SUV in the underground garage minutes ago, right next to a sleek, midnight blue Grand Tourer. She adjusted the thick leather tool belt sitting on her hips. The canvas straps dug into her waist. She wore faded denim overalls that hugged her soft curves, with her auburn hair piled onto her head in a messy bun and secured with a yellow wooden pencil. Walking into the main living space, she set her stainless steel thermos down on a glass coffee table. She pulled a small notepad from her pocket. Her client, a man named Cole, wanted an emergency repair. He demanded speed and discretion. Ruby walked over to the far wall near the hallway. She narrowed her sage-green eyes. Deep, jagged slashes tore through the thick oak panels. The wood lay splintered and shredded into sharp teeth. It lacked the clean lines of tool marks or a demolition crew. It looked like a wild beast had been trapped inside the living room and tried to dig its way out. What kind of animal does damage like this in the middle of a modern city? She ran a cautious finger near the edge of the ruined wood. A cold shiver traced her spine. The sound of the elevator pinging made her turn around. A man stepped into the room. The air in the penthouse vanished. Cole stood well over 6 feet, with a broad, thick chest and heavy shoulders that blocked out the hallway light. His tailored black button-down shirt stretched tight over rigid biceps, the dark fabric pulling at the seams. He possessed dark, unruly hair that fell over his forehead. His jawline held sharp angles, lacking any softness. His presence carried a commanding, dangerous energy. Ruby wanted to take a step back. Cole stopped dead in his tracks. His striking amber eyes locked onto her. The scent of wild berries and fresh rain hit his senses like a punch to the gut. His heart hammered against his ribs like a war drum. His inner beast scratched at the edges of his mind, howling to claim the woman standing in his living room. She was his mate. He clenched his jaw. He forced his large hands into his pockets to keep from reaching for her. He could not bring a fragile human into his dangerous life. The risk was too high. He needed to push her away, make her finish the job, and get her out of his territory before his control snapped. "You are the restorer," Cole said. His voice rumbled deep and rough, carrying a demanding tone. He took a deliberate step forward, his boots echoing in the large room. "I expect this finished by Friday. No delays. I want my home put back together." Ruby blinked. His cold greeting caught her off guard. She crossed her arms over her chest, leaning on her right leg. She refused to let his intimidating size rattle her nerves. She ran a professional business, and she demanded respect from her clients, no matter how tall they stood. "I don't care how handsome he is, no client speaks to me like an unruly employee." "Hello to you too," Ruby replied. Her tone held a polite but firm edge. "I am Ruby. I can have it done by Friday, assuming the underlying frame remains intact. But I need you to step back from the work area right now." Cole stared at her, his amber eyes widened a fraction. "If you track dirt onto the clean floorboards with those boots, I will add a cleaning fee to your invoice," she continued, gesturing to his footwear. No one in the Silver Pine Pack ever spoke to him like that. Lower-ranking wolves dropped their gaze in his presence. But this human woman, with her messy hair and loaded tool belt, looked him straight in the eye and scolded him over floorboards. A strange, warm feeling flared in his chest. Her bravery is going to be the absolute death of my self-control. "Understood," Cole muttered. He took a step back. He tore his gaze away from her soft features, looking out the large windows to hide his reaction. "Do what you need to do. Just fix the wall." Ruby gave a firm nod. She unclipped a measuring tape from her belt. This grumpy man presented a challenge, but she had a job to do. She just hoped her pet would behave when she brought him up from the car tomorrow. If Truffles bites this man's ankles, I might end up in a lawsuit. Chapter 2. The next morning, Ruby parked her pearlescent plum SUV in the underground garage. She popped the trunk and grabbed her heavy-duty 10,000 lumen halogen construction light. She needed bright illumination to see the fine details of the oak grain. With her other hand, she unclipped a small leash. Truffles trotted out of the car. The miniature pig sported a spotless pink coat with small black spots. He snorted, sniffing the concrete floor with clear disdain. Ruby never went anywhere without him. He acted like a tiny guard dog, passing judgment on anyone who crossed their path. "Come on, buddy," Ruby coaxed. "Behave today. The client is a giant grump." They rode the elevator up to the penthouse. Ruby hauled the heavy halogen light into the living room, setting it near the shattered oak wall. She clicked the power switch. A blinding white beam flooded the workspace, exposing the dust motes dancing in the air. Truffles wandered across the premium marble floor. His little hooves made clicking sounds. Cole emerged from the hallway. He wore gray sweatpants and a tight white t-shirt. His hair stuck up in every direction. He rubbed his face, looking exhausted. He stopped when he saw the pig. Truffles stopped. The pig narrowed his tiny eyes. He let out a loud, aggressive snort. "You brought livestock into my home," Cole stated. His voice sounded thick with sleep. "He is my companion," Ruby countered, setting her stainless steel thermos on the glass table. "His name is Truffles. He is very clean and stays out of the way." Before Ruby could finish her sentence, Truffles spotted a target. Near the sofa sat a pair of Cole's Italian leather shoes. The pig charged. He snatched the left shoe in his jaws, turned around, and scrambled under the glass coffee table. So much for staying out of the way. Cole stared at the empty spot where his shoe used to be. He looked down at the pig hiding under the table. "Give it back," Cole ordered. Truffles chewed on the expensive leather. He maintained intense eye contact with the towering alpha. Ruby pressed her lips together, fighting a laugh. Cole possessed the build of a heavyweight fighter, yet he stood there looking completely helpless against a 10-pound farm animal. I don't understand why a man this tall looks genuinely intimidated by a tiny pig. "I need that shoe." Cole tried again. He crouched down, extending a large hand toward the table. "Come here, Truffles. Drop it." He tried to keep his tone soft. He refused to use his alpha aura on a human's pet. The effort made his jaw tick. He looked awkward, like a lion trying to reason with a mouse. Truffles ignored him and chewed harder on the heel. Ruby could not hold it in anymore. A bright laugh escaped her chest. The sound echoed in the large penthouse. Cole froze. He looked up at her, his amber eyes tracking the smile on her face. The tension in his broad shoulders vanished. "He does not like to be told what to do," Ruby said. She reached into her overalls pocket, pulling out a small apple slice. She knelt beside the table. "Truffles, trade." The pig dropped the ruined leather shoe and trotted over to accept the snack. Ruby picked up the damp shoe and handed it to Cole. "I will add the replacement cost to the final invoice," she offered, giving him an apologetic smile. Cole took the shoe. His fingers brushed against hers. A jolt of electricity sparked between them. Ruby sucked in a breath. Cole's amber eyes darkened. "Keep the money," Cole rumbled, his gaze locked on her lips. "I have others." "The friction between us feels like a lit match near gasoline." Ruby swallowed hard. She turned away, grabbing her thermos to hide her flushed cheeks. She poured a cup of coffee and held it out to him. "Peace offering?" she asked. Cole took the cup. He opened his mouth to speak. A loud noise interrupted him. The heavy penthouse door rattled. Someone pounded on the thick wood from the outside. The force shook the hinges. Ruby jumped, spilling a drop of coffee from her thermos. Cole dropped the cup. It shattered on the marble floor. His entire demeanor changed. The soft, awkward man vanished. A lethal predator took his place. Chapter 3. The heavy penthouse door groaned under another brutal impact. Wood splintered around the deadbolt. "Get behind me," Cole ordered. His voice lacked any warmth. He stepped in front of Ruby, shielding her from the entryway. Ruby's heart beat like a jackhammer. She looked around the room for a weapon. Her tool belt lay near the halogen light. "I refuse to stand here and wait for the worst to happen." The door crashed open. 3 men rushed into the penthouse. They wore dark masks over their faces. They held thick steel pipes in their hands. They charged straight for Cole. Ruby panicked. She viewed Cole as a rich civilian client. He paid people to fix his walls. He did not fight armed thugs. Her protective instincts took over. She grabbed his muscular arm. "Move!" She yanked him toward the bedroom hallway. Cole stumbled, surprised by her sudden burst of strength. He let her pull him into the master bedroom. The custom walk-in closet stood open on their right. The doorframe felt solid. Ruby shoved the towering man inside the dark closet. "Stay quiet and call the police!" Ruby yelled. She slammed the heavy oak door shut and twisted the thick metal deadbolt. Cole banged his fist against the wood from the inside. "Ruby, open the door!" She ignored him. She turned around to face the bedroom entrance. She grabbed a wooden chair from a vanity desk and hoisted it like a baseball bat. "I will not let these thugs hurt him while I am here." The 3 masked men poured into the bedroom. They saw Ruby holding the chair. One of them laughed, a cruel, grating sound. They fanned out, raising their steel pipes. Ruby tightened her grip. Sweat slicked her palms. She took a step back, bumping into the locked closet door. Behind her, a loud crack echoed through the room. The masked men stopped. The sound of splintering wood grew louder. The closet door bowed outward. Ruby scrambled away, dropping the chair. She tripped over the edge of the plush rug, landing hard on her hands and knees. With a deafening crash, the thick closet door ripped clean off its hinges. Splinters rained down on the carpet. The heavy wood slammed onto the floor, kicking up a cloud of dust. Cole stepped out of the shadows. He looked different. His chest expanded. The tailored t-shirt shredded down the middle, unable to contain his shifting muscles. His amber eyes glowed with a bright, unnatural gold light. A deep, vibrating growl ripped from his throat, shaking the walls of the room. That is not a human sound. That is the sound of a nightmare. "I don't hide," Cole snarled. His voice sounded layered, like 2 entities speaking at once. The intruders took a step back. Their confidence evaporated. The leader raised his steel pipe, trying to strike Cole. Cole moved faster than a human could track. He grabbed the steel pipe with one bare hand. He squeezed. The thick metal bent and crumpled like cheap tin under his grip. He tossed the ruined weapon aside. Ruby stayed frozen on the floor. Her mind could not process the impossible sight in front of her. The man who drank her coffee just minutes ago was tearing a steel pipe apart with his bare hands. My client is a monster. Chapter 4. The sound of breaking bones filled the bedroom. Cole dropped to his hands and knees. His spine arched at a severe angle. His dark hair lengthened, blending into thick, coarse fur. His jaw elongated, snapping into the shape of a snout. Ruby watched in sheer horror. The shift looked agonizing, yet he completed it in seconds. Where Cole once stood, a towering midnight black wolf now crouched. The beast was huge. Its shoulders reached the height of Ruby's chest. The wolf bared its razor-sharp teeth at the intruders. The masked men did not stay to fight. They screamed. They dropped their remaining weapons and scrambled out of the bedroom, running for the shattered front door. The giant wolf roared, a sound that vibrated deep in Ruby's chest. The beast lunged forward, chasing the men down the hallway. Ruby's mind broke. Pure terror flooded her veins. Werewolves are real. The myths are real, and one is inside this apartment. She tried to stand, but her knees buckled. Her legs gave out completely. She scrambled backward, knocking her stainless steel thermos off the glass coffee table. It hit the floor, and coffee spilled over her boots, but she did not care. She scrambled backward on her hands and knees, desperate to put distance between herself and the hallway. Her breathing turned shallow and erratic. The sounds of a scuffle echoed from the living room. Heavy thuds, a man screaming in pain, the terrifying snarl of the beast. Ruby found her footing. She sprinted toward the master bathroom. She slammed the heavy wooden door shut behind her. Her trembling fingers fumbled with the lock. She twisted the deadbolt, hearing the satisfying click of the metal securing her inside. She backed away from the door until her spine hit the cool porcelain tiles of the shower wall. She slid down to the floor, pulling her knees to her chest. She wrapped her arms around her legs, burying her face in her denim overalls. Tears stung her eyes. The reality of the situation crashed over her. She was trapped in a penthouse with a lethal predator. I am hiding in a bathroom like a coward, waiting to be eaten. Outside the door, the penthouse fell silent. The intruders were gone. Heavy paws padded across the bedroom floor. The wolf stopped right outside the bathroom door. Ruby held her breath. She pressed her hands over her mouth to muffle her sobs. A loud, wet sniff sounded near the bottom gap of the door. The beast was smelling her terror. "Go away," Ruby whispered. Her voice shook. The wolf let out a low, mournful whine. The sound lacked any aggression. It sounded like an apology. He tore a steel pipe in half. "I cannot trust a whine." Ruby closed her eyes. She hugged her knees tighter. The heavy paws paced back and forth outside the bathroom for a few minutes. Then, the sounds shifted. The cracking of bones echoed again, followed by a heavy sigh. Ruby stayed on the floor. She refused to open that door. The broken closet frame in the bedroom served as a stark reminder of his strength. She waited in the silence, her heart pounding a relentless rhythm against her ribs. Chapter 5. Ruby sat on the cold porcelain tiles of the master bathroom, her knees pressed tight against her chest. The scent of dark roast coffee drifted upward from her stained work boots, a bitter reminder of the world she understood. Outside the heavy wooden door, the penthouse remained trapped in a tense silence. The intruders were gone. The beast remained. A sharp, violent crack echoed through the bedroom. Ruby flinched. Another crack followed, accompanied by a low, breathless groan. The sounds painted a gruesome picture of bones snapping, reshaping, and settling back into human form. Footsteps padded across the hardwood, not paws, but bare human feet. The heavy tread moved away from the bathroom, heading toward a distant dresser. Fabric rustled. A drawer slid shut. The footsteps returned, stopping inches from the door. Ruby held her breath. She wrapped her arms around her legs, burying her face in the rough denim of her overalls. Cole slid down the opposite side of the door. The thud of his broad back hitting the wood vibrated through the frame. A deep, ragged sigh escaped his lungs. "Ruby," Cole said. His voice rumbled, carrying a raspy edge, but it lacked the terrifying, layered distortion of the wolf. "I know you are terrified. I understand." Ruby squeezed her eyes shut. She refused to speak. If she spoke, she acknowledged the monster. "I am a lycanthrope," Cole continued, his tone steady and calm. "A werewolf. I was born with the curse in my blood. The beast you saw is half of my soul, but I swear on my life I will never let it harm you." Ruby rested her chin on her knees. Logic warred with her rising panic. She ran a practical business. She dealt with ruined drywall and plumbing disasters, not supernatural creatures. Yet her mind flashed back to the morning. This same man had crouched on the floor, looking completely defeated by a 10-pound miniature pig named Truffles. Monsters did not negotiate with pigs. "You tore a steel pipe in half," Ruby whispered. Her voice shook, betraying her fear. "I protected my home," Cole countered. "I protected you. Those men broke down my door with weapons. I did what I had to do." Silence stretched between them. The cold tile seeped through Ruby's jeans, chilling her skin. "Please come out," Cole coaxed. The raw vulnerability in his tone tugged at her chest. "I need to know you are uninjured." Ruby. I should run for my life, yet his raw honesty anchors my panic. She uncurled her legs. Her muscles ached from the tension. She reached up, grabbing the edge of the vanity sink to pull herself off the floor. Her spilled thermos lay near the baseboard. She left it there. Taking a slow, measured breath, she stepped toward the door. She reached out and twisted the deadbolt. The lock clicked open. She turned the handle and pulled the door inward. Cole sat on the floor, his knees pulled up, resting his arms on them. He wore a fresh black t-shirt and his gray sweatpants. His dark, unruly hair stuck to his forehead with sweat. He looked up, his amber eyes wide and anxious. The lethal predator was gone. Only a tired, stressed man remained. Chapter 6. Ruby stepped out of the bathroom. She kept her distance, her shoulders rigid. Cole pushed himself off the floor, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. He gave her space. They turned their attention to the master bedroom. The destruction hit Ruby like a bucket of ice water. The custom walk-in closet door lay flat on the plush rug. Splinters of expensive oak littered the room. The thick hinges were bent into twisted shapes. Near the foot of the bed, the steel pipe rested, crumpled and useless. "This is a disaster," Ruby muttered, her professional instincts overriding a fraction of her fear. She pulled the yellow pencil from her messy bun, letting her auburn hair fall around her shoulders. She stepped forward, inspecting the ruined wood. "The frame is shattered beyond a simple patch job. We need to rebuild the entire archway." Cole watched her. The transition from a terrified woman hiding in a bathroom to a focused contractor assessing damage left him speechless. "I will cover the cost," Cole said, stepping closer. "Whatever the financial impact, add it to my bill. I have the funds." Ruby shook her head. "It is not just about the money. The debris is heavy. I need extra hands to clear this out before I can even measure for new lumber." A tiny, indignant snort interrupted the conversation. Ruby turned toward the bedroom doorway. Truffles trotted into the room. The miniature pig looked annoyed. He ignored the towering alpha, marched straight to Ruby, and nudged her spilled coffee boots with his pink snout. "Where did you go during the fight?" Ruby asked, scooping the pig into her arms. Truffles offered a dismissive grunt, resting his head on her shoulder. "He hid behind the sofa in the living room," Cole supplied. A ghost of a smile touched his sharp jawline. "Right next to the shattered coffee cup." Ruby sighed. The mess in this penthouse grew by the minute. Between the deep claw marks in the living room, the ruined closet, the broken front door, and the scattered ceramic pieces, she had weeks of work ahead of her. "I will help you clear the debris," Cole offered, gesturing to the broken closet door. "I broke it. I should fix it. Tell me what to do, and I will follow your lead." Cole. Her calm acceptance of my chaos strips away years of built-up defenses. Ruby studied his face. His amber eyes held nothing but sincerity. He ran a pack of wolves, yet he stood ready to take orders from a human contractor. "Fine," Ruby agreed, setting Truffles down. "But you need to sweep up the ceramic in the living room first. I refuse to step on sharp edges." Cole nodded, turning toward the hallway without a single complaint. Chapter 7. The living room felt like a construction zone. Ruby's 10,000 lumen halogen light blasted a blinding white beam against the wall. She stood near the oak panels, writing measurements on her clipboard. Cole finished sweeping the last of the shattered coffee cup into a dustpan. A loud voice echoed from the entryway. "Hello? Is anyone decent?" Ruby froze. She recognized that cheerful tone anywhere. Aunt Darla stepped through the splintered remains of the front door. She wore a bright yellow floral dress and carried a giant red Tupperware container. Darla stopped, inspecting the kicked-in doorframe with a disapproving click of her tongue. "City living," Darla proclaimed, shaking her head. "I told your mother this neighborhood lacked proper security. Look at this contractor mess." Ruby rushed forward. "Aunt Darla, what are you doing here?" "Bringing you lunch, of course," Darla said, marching into the living room. She stopped, her eyes landing on Cole. Cole stood holding the plastic dustpan. His broad chest and towering height dominated the space. His amber eyes widened in alarm. Darla gasped. She marched straight up to the lethal predator. "Oh, you poor thing, look at you. You are nothing but skin and bones. Do you ever stop working?" Cole blinked, completely bewildered. "Ma'am?" "Don't ma'am me. Sit down," Darla ordered, pointing a stern finger toward the Italian leather sofa. The alpha of the Silver Pine pack obeyed instantly. He dropped the dustpan and sat rigid on the edge of the cushions. Darla popped the lid off the Tupperware. A mountain of dense, homemade meatloaf sat inside. She grabbed a plastic fork, cut a giant slab, and shoved the container into Cole's large hands. "Eat," Darla instructed. "You look stressed. A growing boy needs proper fuel, not whatever protein powder you drink at the gym." Ruby bit the inside of her cheek. She clamped a hand over her mouth to trap a laugh. Cole looked at the cold meatloaf. He looked at Darla. He looked at Ruby for help. Ruby offered a helpless shrug. "Cole, I lead a pack of lethal predators, yet this woman wielding Tupperware fills me with pure dread." Terrified to offend the woman, Cole picked up the plastic fork. He took a bite of the dense meatloaf. He chewed with strict military precision. "Good, isn't it?" Darla beamed, patting his thick shoulder. "Ruby always works her clients too hard. Make sure she gives you a break, handsome." "It is delicious," Cole choked out, forcing a polite smile. Truffles trotted over, sniffing the air. The pig sat at Cole's feet, staring up at the meatloaf with hungry, unblinking eyes. Cole discreetly dropped a small chunk of meat onto the floor. Truffles devoured it and gave a satisfied snort. Darla stayed for another 20 minutes, oblivious to the supernatural tension, before kissing Ruby's cheek and marching back out through the broken door. Chapter 8. The penthouse fell quiet after Darla's departure. Ruby and Cole retreated to the master bedroom to tackle the ruined closet frame. The afternoon sun filtered through the large windows, casting long shadows across the floor. "I need to measure the internal track," Ruby said, pulling her metal measuring tape from her leather belt. "Hold this end against the far corner." Cole stepped into the dark closet space. The area felt cramped with his broad shoulders occupying the center. He took the metal tip of the tape, pressing it against the drywall. Ruby stepped in closer. She stretched her arms to reach the opposite corner. The space forced them inches apart. Cole ran hot. His body temperature radiated like a furnace in the confined space. Ruby felt the heat seeping through her denim overalls. She focused her eyes on the metal numbers, trying to ignore the solid wall of muscle standing right beside her. "Hold it steady," Ruby instructed, her voice dropping a fraction lower than intended. "I am holding it," Cole murmured. He looked down at her. He tracked the stray strands of auburn hair framing her face. He noted the soft flush creeping up her neck. Her scent filled his lungs, drowning out reason. Ruby needed to read a mark near his hand. She shifted her weight, leaning in. Cole reached for the tape lock at the exact same moment. His rough, calloused fingers brushed against the back of her hand. A sharp, undeniable spark of electricity jumped between their skin. Ruby gasped, dropping the metal casing. The tape retracted with a loud snap, clattering onto the floor. She did not step back. She looked up, her sage-green eyes colliding with his amber gaze. The air grew heavy, quick with unspoken tension. Cole's chest rose and fell in a ragged rhythm. He did not break eye contact. He leaned down, closing the distance by a fraction of an inch. "Ruby. The sudden jolt of electricity racing up my arm feels dangerously intoxicating." The fear from the morning vanished, replaced by a consuming warmth. She noticed the small flecks of gold hidden in his irises. She felt the magnetic pull of the mate bond, an invisible tether drawing them together. A loud clatter from the living room shattered the moment. Truffles let out an angry squeal. Ruby stepped back, bumping her shoulders against the wall. She cleared her throat, her face burning. "That pig possesses terrible timing," Ruby stammered, pointing a thumb toward the hallway. "Agreed," Cole said. His voice sounded hoarse. He dragged a hand through his dark hair, looking flushed. Ruby turned away, her heart hammering a frantic, breathless beat against her ribs. The broken door needed fixing, but the walls she built around herself were already starting to crumble. Chapter 9. Ruby stood frozen in the dark space of the master closet. Her chest rose and fell in a ragged rhythm. The sharp spark of electricity still tingled against the back of her hand. She stared at the retracted metal measuring tape resting on the hardwood floor. Cole stood inches away, his towering frame casting a long shadow across the room. His amber eyes locked onto hers, holding an unspoken promise. She broke the silence first. She bent down, grabbed the metal casing, and slipped it into her leather tool belt. She pulled the yellow wooden pencil from her pocket, jotting the final numbers onto her clipboard. Her auburn hair fell around her shoulders, framing her flushed face. "I have the replacement lumber in my vehicle," Ruby said. Her voice lacked its usual steady edge. "I ordered the oak boards yesterday morning. We need to carry them up from the garage." Cole stepped back, giving her room to breathe. "I will carry them. Show me the way." They rode the elevator down to the underground garage. The pearlescent plum crossover SUV sat parked next to Cole's midnight blue Grand Tourer. Ruby popped the trunk, revealing a stack of premium oak lumber. The wood carried a high price tag, fitting the luxurious aesthetic of the penthouse. Cole did not wait for instructions. He reached into the trunk and hoisted the entire stack of thick oak boards onto his broad shoulder. A normal man would require 3 trips to move that amount of weight. Cole carried it like a bundle of dry twigs. The fabric of his fresh black t-shirt pulled tight across his rigid biceps and chest. Ruby watched his muscles flex, swallowing the sudden lump in her throat. She grabbed a box of steel screws and her heavy-duty power drill, following him back to the elevator. Back in the master bedroom, the real work began. Ruby set up 2 sawhorses. She marked the hinge placements on the new wood. She handed Cole a heavy-duty power drill and a handful of screws. "Line the bracket up with the pencil mark," Ruby instructed, pointing to the edge of the board. "Apply steady pressure, but do not force the screw into the grain." Cole nodded. He positioned the drill, squeezed the trigger, and pushed. A loud crack echoed in the room. The steel screw snapped in half. The head of the fastener spun across the floor. Cole sighed, staring at the broken metal lodged in the expensive oak. His immense strength made delicate human tasks difficult. He could tear a steel pipe apart with his bare hands, yet a simple woodworking screw defeated him. "My apologies," Cole murmured, his jaw ticking with frustration. "Step back," Ruby laughed, a bright, clear sound that eased the tension in the room. "You treat the drill like a weapon. It is a tool. You need finesse, not brute force." She stepped up beside him. She placed another screw into the bracket. She reached out, wrapping her soft hands over his large, calloused fingers gripping the drill. "Hold it steady," she whispered. "Cole." Her calm patience grounds the restless energy under my skin. With her hands guiding his, Cole squeezed the trigger again. The drill whirred. The screw bit into the wood, sinking perfectly flush against the metal bracket. They repeated the process. Every time she touched his hands, that strange, intoxicating warmth spread through his chest. For the first time in years, the alpha of the Silver Pine pack felt complete peace. Chapter 10. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long, golden shadows through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse. The closet doorframe sat ready for installation. Ruby wiped a smudge of sawdust from her forehead and suggested a break. They moved into the living room. The ruined oak wall panel remained a jagged reminder of the morning's chaos. Ruby clicked off the 10,000 lumen halogen light, letting the natural evening glow fill the space. She walked over to the glass coffee table, eyeing the giant red Tupperware container Aunt Darla left behind. "Are you hungry?" Ruby asked, opening the lid. The dense, homemade meatloaf sat inside. "I can eat," Cole replied. He sat down on the edge of the Italian leather sofa. He had slipped on a pair of canvas sneakers to avoid stepping on hidden wood splinters. Ruby portioned out the food onto 2 plates. She handed one to Cole and sat on the opposite end of the sofa. Truffles, the miniature pig, trotted out from the hallway. The pig wore a spotless pink coat with small black spots. He stopped in the center of the marble floor, staring at Cole with pure disdain. "Tell me about your world," Ruby requested, taking a bite of the meatloaf. "You mentioned a pack. How does a werewolf community function in a modern city?" Cole set his fork down. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "We operate in the shadows. The pack functions like a large, extended family. We have the Gamma, who handles training and border security. We have enforcers, who act as our internal police to keep the peace." Truffles trotted closer to the sofa. The pig stopped right next to Cole's canvas sneakers. With a swift, calculated bite, Truffles grabbed the white shoelace and gave a hard yank. The knot came undone. Cole paused his explanation. He looked down. He tied the shoe with a blank stare, ignoring the animal. "And the rest of the pack?" Ruby prompted, fighting a smile. "Most of the pack falls into the Delta rank," Cole continued, turning his amber gaze back to her. "They live normal lives. They run businesses, raise children, and support the community. We also have Omegas. They possess a natural, calming presence. They settle arguments and bring comfort to the sick." Truffles struck again. The pig grabbed the other shoelace, tugging it until the bow unraveled. Cole stopped talking. The towering alpha let out a long, tired sigh. He reached down with his large hands and scooped the 10-pound pig off the floor. Truffles let out an indignant squeal, kicking his tiny hooves in protest. Cole ignored the fuss. He placed the pig onto his broad lap. He began to rub a precise spot right behind Truffles' left ear. The pig froze. The angry squeals turned into a soft, rhythmic grunt. Within seconds, Truffles closed his eyes, melting into a puddle of pink lethargy against Cole's gray sweatpants. Ruby. Seeing this fierce leader cradle a sleeping pig softens every defense I have left. Ruby stared at the scene. The man possessed enough raw power to break bones, yet he sat on a leather sofa, gently rocking a farm animal to sleep just to finish a conversation. He was a walking contradiction, and she found herself drawn to every single facet of his personality. Chapter 11. The living room fell into a comfortable domestic rhythm. The cloudy silver pine skyline outside the windows shifted from gold to deep purple. Ruby finished her portion of Aunt Darla's meatloaf. Cole balanced his plate in one hand, eating with steady precision while the miniature pig snored on his lap. "You mentioned the Gammas, Deltas, and Omegas," Ruby said, setting her empty plate on the glass table. "What about you? You are the Alpha. What does that mean for your daily life?" Cole swallowed a bite of the dense food. The amber hue in his eyes brightened at the question. "The Alpha carries the weight of the entire pack," Cole explained. His voice rumbled, vibrating with a quiet authority. "My primary duty revolves around protection. I make the final choices regarding our territory, our finances, and our alliances. I keep the monsters away from our borders." "That sounds exhausting," Ruby noted, tracing the edge of her stained work boots with her gaze. "It requires total control," Cole agreed. "I run hotter than normal humans. My body temperature sits higher, and my inner beast constantly tests my restraint. If I lose my temper, I could cause severe damage. I must maintain an iron grip on my emotions at all hours." Ruby leaned back against the leather cushions. "You also mentioned a command. In the bathroom, you said you refuse to use your alpha voice on Truffles. Does your voice carry some kind of magic?" Cole's expression turned serious. The casual atmosphere in the room vanished. He set his plate down next to the red Tupperware. "It is not magic," Cole said, his tone dropping an octave. "It is a biological imperative passed down through the bloodline. When an alpha pushes his will into his words, it hits lower-ranking wolves like a physical blow to the stomach. It forces them to drop their gaze, bare their throats, and obey the command without question. A cold chill washed over Ruby's skin. The idea of losing control over her own body terrified her. She valued her independence above all else. She ran her own business, paid her own bills, and made her own choices. "Would you use that voice on a human?" Ruby asked. Her voice wavered, betraying the sudden spike of fear in her chest. "Would you use it to force me to do something I did not want to do?" Cole shifted on the sofa. He placed Truffles gently onto the cushions. He stood up, closing the distance between them. He knelt on the marble floor right in front of her, forcing her to look down into his eyes. "Never," Cole vowed. The word hung in the air, heavy with absolute sincerity. "I would tear out my own vocal cords before I ever stripped away your free will. Cole, my inner wolf promises to protect her autonomy as fiercely as her life." Ruby stared into his face, the sharp angles of his jaw tight with conviction. He meant every single word. The fear evaporated, leaving behind a profound sense of trust. She reached out, her fingers brushing the dark, unruly hair falling across his forehead. Cole leaned into her touch, closing his eyes, surrendering his towering strength to her soft hands. Chapter 12. Night settled over the city of Silverpine. Ruby and Cole returned to the master bedroom to finish the final task. The new oak closet door stood ready. They lifted the heavy wood together, lining the metal hinges up with the fresh brackets. Cole held the weight steady while Ruby secured the screws. "Test it," Ruby instructed, stepping back. Cole grabbed the brass handle. He pulled the door open and pushed it shut. The thick wood glided on the hinges without a single creak, closing flush against the frame. A perfect fit. "Excellent work," Cole praised, turning to look at her. Ruby offered a tired smile. She walked over to her heavy-duty leather tool belt, resting on the vanity chair. She began unfastening her pockets, placing her tools back into their designated slots. She dropped her yellow wooden pencil into the main pouch. She grabbed her empty stainless steel thermos from the bathroom floor. The reality of the situation hit her. The closet door hung in place. The living room wall still carried deep claw marks, and the front entryway remained splintered, but her emergency repair for the day was finished. The lucrative financial impact of the invoice was secure. She had no professional reason to stay in the penthouse any longer. She zipped her tool bag shut. The sound echoed in the quiet bedroom, feeling like a final period at the end of a sentence. "I will return tomorrow morning to assess the living room wall," Ruby said, keeping her gaze fixed on the zipper. "I need to draft a new blueprint for the ruined panels." Cole watched her pack. A knot formed in his chest. His inner beast scratched at the surface of his mind, howling in protest at the idea of her walking out the door. The penthouse felt empty before she arrived. Now, the thought of the quiet rooms without her scent of wild berries and fresh rain felt unbearable. Ruby slung the heavy tool belt over her shoulder. She picked up Truffles, tucking the sleeping pig under her arm. She walked out of the bedroom, heading toward the shattered remains of the front door. Cole followed close behind. He stopped her before she crossed the threshold. He reached out, his large hand gently catching her elbow. "Wait," Cole said. His voice sounded rough, lacking any alpha command. "The front door is broken. The security of this building is compromised until the maintenance crew fixes the deadbolt." Ruby turned around. "I know. You should put a heavy chair against it for the night." "That is not what I mean," Cole stammered, his amber eyes searching her face. He took a deep breath, dropping his formidable walls. "I want you to stay. Not as my contractor. Stay as my guest. The guest room down the hall is secure. I will keep watch." Ruby stared at him. She thought about her small, quiet apartment across town. She thought about eating dinner alone. "Ruby, I suddenly realize my quiet apartment feels far too lonely compared to this." She looked at the fierce, towering alpha, asking her to stay with the vulnerability of a normal man. A soft smile broke across her face. "Okay," Ruby agreed, setting her tool belt down on the floor. "I will stay." Chapter 13. Sleep evaded Ruby. The guest room mattress offered plush comfort, yet her mind refused to rest. She stared at the ceiling shadows. Her thoughts drifted toward the ruined oak panels in the living room. The project required a high budget, and she needed a flawless execution. She needed to sketch a new blueprint before dawn. She tossed the heavy duvet aside. She still wore her faded denim overalls and stained work boots. She grabbed a black pen and a fresh notepad from the nightstand. She crept out of the bedroom. The penthouse sat trapped in darkness. Cole kept watch near the splintered front door, hidden from view. A heavy oak chair jammed the broken entryway, securing the perimeter. Truffles snored on the guest bed behind her, oblivious to the world. Ruby bypassed the main sitting area. Thirst scratched at her throat. She walked into the unfinished kitchen. Bare drywall surrounded the luxury stainless steel appliances. The overhead fixtures lacked light bulbs. Shadows pooled in the corners of the room. She remembered her 10,000 lumen halogen construction light. She had dragged it near the kitchen island earlier that afternoon. She fumbled in the dark. Her calloused hands grazed the cold metal casing of the lamp. A floorboard groaned. The sound originated from the walk-in pantry. It lacked the heavy, deliberate tread of the alpha. This footstep carried a stealthy, creeping cadence. Ruby froze. Her pulse hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She gripped the cold handle of the halogen light. A tall figure stepped out of the pantry. A black ski mask obscured his face. He wore a tailored, charcoal gray suit. A shiny blade caught the faint moonlight filtering through the windows. The metal gleamed with a toxic silver hue. The attacker took a step forward. He raised the knife. He let out a low, theatrical chuckle. Panic spiked in Ruby's chest, but raw anger followed fast. She remembered the bathroom floor. She remembered the crippling terror. She refused to repeat the experience. She would not cower. She would fight. Ruby. I refuse to play the helpless victim hiding in the dark ever again. She hoisted the heavy construction light, aiming the glass face toward the masked intruder. Her thumb slammed the power switch. 10,000 lumens of pure, blinding white light erupted in the dark kitchen. The beam hit the attacker straight in the eyes. The man shrieked. The sound mirrored a wounded animal. He dropped the silver blade, throwing both hands over his face. He stumbled backward, crashing hard into the unpainted drywall. "My eyes!" the man yelled, his voice cracked. "Turn it off! By the goddess, turn it off!" Ruby kept the beam locked on his face. She reached into her tool belt, wrapped her fingers around the metal handle of her wrench. She stood her ground, her boots planted firm on the marble floor. The heavy thud of footsteps shook the hallway. Cole charged into the kitchen. The towering alpha moved with lethal speed. His amber eyes swept the room, assessing the threat in a fraction of a second. He saw the blinded man. He saw the silver blade spinning across the floor toward Ruby's boots. The air in the room vanished. Cole lunged. Chapter 14. Cole dove across the kitchen floor. The falling weapon tumbled through the air, the silver edge catching the blinding light. Cole thrust his arm out, intercepting the blade before it could strike Ruby's leg. The flat of the silver-coated knife slapped against his bare forearm. A horrific sizzle echoed through the room. Plumes of acrid white smoke curled from Cole's skin. The silver acted like concentrated acid against his lycanthrope blood. The metal burned through his flesh, leaving a blistering, blackened wound in its wake. Cole bit his tongue. He swallowed the roar of agony rising in his throat. He refused to make a sound. Cole. I must swallow the blazing fire in my veins so my pain does not frighten her. He kicked the blade away. The weapon skittered across the marble floor, stopping near the base of the cabinets. Cole dropped to one knee. His broad shoulders hitched. Sweat beaded on his forehead. The silver poison raced through his bloodstream, draining his immense strength. His breath came in ragged, shallow gasps. Ruby dropped the halogen light. The beam hit the ceiling, casting stark shadows across the room. She rushed to his side, her boots slipping on the slick floor. "Cole!" She grabbed his uninjured shoulder. "You are hurt. Let me see." "Do not touch the wound," Cole ordered. His voice sounded hoarse and strained. "The silver remains toxic." He forced himself to stand. He swayed, leaning his heavy frame against the kitchen island. He pointed a shaking finger toward a utility drawer near the sink. "Gloves," he grunted. "Leather work gloves, in the drawer." Ruby scrambled to the cabinets. She yanked the drawer open. She bypassed a stack of screwdrivers and grabbed a pair of thick, insulated leather work gloves. She tossed them to Cole. Cole caught the leather. He pulled the thick material over his large hands, protecting his skin. He walked toward the baseboards. He bent down, his jaw tight with effort, and picked up the silver blade. He marched to the trash chute located near the service elevator. He shoved the weapon inside, sending the toxic metal down into the building's incinerator. With the threat neutralized, the adrenaline faded. The silver burn took its toll. Cole staggered backward, his knees buckled. Ruby caught his arm, wrapping her hands around his thick bicep. She braced her stance, taking a fraction of his weight. "I have you," Ruby promised. The masked attacker still crouched against the drywall, rubbing his watering eyes. He groaned, trying to find his footing. Cole turned his head. His amber eyes flared with a lethal, burning rage. The flecks of gold in his irises shone like embers. He shoved away from the island, marching toward the intruder. The air pressure in the room plummeted. The alpha of the Silver Pine Pack demanded retribution. Chapter 15. Cole grabbed the attacker by the lapels of the charcoal suit. He slammed the man against the drywall. The impact rattled the unpainted boards. Cole raised his uninjured hand, gripping the black ski mask. He ripped the fabric away in one violent motion. Ruby braced herself for a hardened criminal. She expected a rogue wolf or a dangerous assassin. Instead, a lean man with perfectly styled blonde hair stared back at them. The man possessed sharp, aristocratic features. Tears streamed down his cheeks from the halogen blast. He blinked rapidly, letting out a dramatic groan. "Watch the suit, Cole," the man complained, batting at Cole's thick hands. "This fabric requires special dry cleaning." Ruby stared. Her jaw dropped. Cole did not loosen his grip. His chest heaved. "Ashton, give me one reason I should not break your jaw right now." Ashton offered a theatrical sigh. "It was a test, a practical joke. You brought a fragile human into the pack territory. I wanted to see her reaction to danger. I used a dull prop blade. I meant no actual harm." Ruby found her voice. The shock morphed into a blazing, hot fury. She marched across the kitchen, stopping inches from the blonde man. "A joke?" Ruby demanded, her voice cracking like a whip. "You broke into this penthouse. You terrified me. You caused severe burns to your own alpha. You consider that a joke?" Ashton blinked, leaning away from her furious glare. He looked at Cole's blistering arm. A flash of genuine guilt crossed his sharp features. "I dropped the blade," Ashton muttered, losing his arrogant posture. "I did not mean for the silver to touch him. Your light blinded my vision." Ruby, the sheer dysfunction of this supernatural bloodline leaves me searching for words. Cole tightened his grip on Ashton's suit. He did not use the alpha voice, but his physical presence commanded the room. "You bring silver into my home," Cole snarled, his fangs extending just past his lower lip. "You threaten my mate. You act like a petulant child. Get out." Cole shoved his cousin toward the hallway. Ashton stumbled, catching his balance near the elevator doors. "Leave the Silver Pine borders," Cole ordered, his tone devoid of any mercy. "If I see your face before the next lunar cycle, I will banish you from the pack." Ashton opened his mouth to argue. He looked at Cole's burning amber eyes. He snapped his mouth shut. He smoothed the lapels of his ruined suit, pressed the elevator button, and stepped inside. The doors slid shut, sealing the prankster away. Silence descended on the penthouse. The chaos evaporated, leaving behind the heavy scent of burnt flesh. Cole leaned against the wall, his breathing ragged. The silver poison continued its slow, agonizing assault on his nervous system. "Come to the living room," Ruby commanded. She grabbed his waist, guiding his towering frame down the hall. "We need to clean that burn." Chapter 16. The living room offered a safe haven. Ruby guided Cole to the Italian leather sofa. He sank into the cushions, resting his head against the backrest. His face looked pale, stripped of its usual commanding color. The burn on his forearm looked gruesome, blackened skin peeled back from raw, red tissue. Ruby ran to the master bathroom. She bypassed the vanity mirror and ripped open the wooden cabinets. She grabbed a thick plastic first aid kit from under the sink. She returned to the living room, setting the box on the glass coffee table. She turned on the gas fireplace. The appliance hummed, feeding steady blue and yellow flames over ceramic logs. The fire cast a warm, flickering glow across the marble floor. "This will sting," Ruby warned, popping the latch on the plastic kit. Cole offered a tired nod. "Silver wounds resist rapid healing. My cells fight the poison. The pain will linger for days." Ruby pulled out a bottle of sterile saline. She positioned a towel under his thick forearm. She poured the cool liquid over the blackened skin. Cole clenched his jaw. His abdominal muscles locked rigid. He did not pull away. He watched her work. Ruby possessed soft hands, yet she moved with confident precision. She wiped the charred edges with an antiseptic pad. She applied a thick layer of burn ointment. She unrolled a spool of white gauze, wrapping the pristine fabric around his heavy bicep and down his forearm. The intimate silence stretched between them. The crackle of the gas fire filled the void. The scent of wild berries and fresh rain surrounded him, chasing away the metallic stench of the silver. "Cole, her gentle touch against my deepest wounds proves she is the only mate I will ever accept." Ruby tied the bandage tight. She rested her hands on his arm, her thumbs tracing the uninjured skin near his wrist. She looked up, her sage-green eyes meeting his amber gaze. "You intercepted that blade for me," Ruby whispered. "You took the poison to keep me safe." "You belong under my protection," Cole replied. The hoarse quality of his voice added weight to the confession. "I will always stand between you and the fire." A knot of pure emotion lodged in Ruby's throat. She stared at the fierce, towering alpha. He commanded an entire underworld. He tore steel pipes apart with his bare hands. Yet, he sat on a sofa, battered and bruised, allow a human contractor to bandage his wounds. Ruby did not step back. She shifted her weight, sitting closer to him on the leather cushions. She rested her head against his uninjured shoulder. Cole let out a long breath. He wrapped his right arm around her waist, pulling her soft curves against his side. They sat together as the night marched on. The silver burned his veins, but the steady beat of her heart against his chest offered the perfect remedy. The walls Ruby built to protect her independence continued to fall, leaving behind a profound, undeniable connection. Chapter 17. The gas fireplace hummed in the corner of the living room. Steady blue and yellow flames danced over the ceramic logs, casting a warm glow across the marble floor. The luxury of the penthouse offered no comfort. Cole sat rigid on the Italian leather sofa. White gauze wrapped his thick forearm, hiding the blistering silver burn. The poison in his veins sapped his immense strength, leaving his face pale and drawn. Ruby sat beside him. She stared at the open plastic first aid kit resting on the glass coffee table next to Aunt Darla's red Tupperware. The adrenaline from the kitchen ambush faded, leaving behind an exhausting, hollow ache in her chest. Cole broke the silence. He shifted his weight on the cushions. He turned his head, locking his amber eyes onto her face. "We need to talk about the future," Cole stated. His voice sounded rough, scraped raw by the pain he refused to show. Ruby nodded. "The intruders are gone. Ashton is banished. You need rest." "Not that," Cole corrected. He leaned forward, resting his uninjured arm on his knee. "I need to tell you the truth about my bloodline, the reality of the lycanthrope curse." Ruby crossed her arms over her denim overalls. She braced herself. "Tell me." "My kind live a long time," Cole began, choosing his words with deliberate care. "Once a werewolf reaches adulthood, the aging process halts. Our cells regenerate at an accelerated rate. We heal from broken bones in hours. We resist human diseases. We outlive normal mortals by centuries." A cold dread pooled in Ruby's stomach. She ran a hand over her face, processing the blunt statement. "You do not age," Ruby repeated. The words tasted bitter on her tongue. "I age," Cole clarified, "but the passage of time affects me at a fraction of the human rate. I will look like this for another 100 years." Ruby stared at the man sitting beside her. He possessed a towering frame, broad shoulders, and a sharp, flawless jawline. He was a force of nature. Then she thought about herself. She was a human contractor. Her body ached after long shifts. Her skin would wrinkle. Her auburn hair would turn gray. Her joints would stiffen. Ruby. The thought of becoming a frail burden to him knocks the wind right out of me. "I will grow old," Ruby whispered. The truth settled on her chest like a stone boulder. Cole did not offer false comfort. He did not lie. He maintained strict eye contact, forcing her to see the agonizing reality of their difference. "You will grow old," Cole agreed. The raw sorrow in his tone echoed in the quiet room. "You will live a full human life. You will age, and you will pass on. I will remain." Ruby stood up from the sofa. Her work boots thudded against the marble. She paced toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. The dark, silver pine skyline stretched out before her. She imagined looking out these same windows decades from now, her hands trembling with arthritis, while Cole stood behind her, unchanged and vibrant. The disparity felt cruel. She wanted a partner. She wanted an equal. The exorbitant price of the penthouse and the safety of the pack meant nothing if she withered away while her mate stayed frozen in time. She turned around, facing the alpha. There must be an alternative. Chapter 18. Cole watched Ruby pace near the windows. The fear in her sage-green eyes twisted a knife deep in his gut. He knew this conversation would break her heart, but his pack laws demanded absolute honesty. "There is a way," Cole admitted. He leaned back against the leather cushions, mindful of his bandaged forearm. Ruby stopped pacing. She took a step toward the sofa. "Explain." "A human can become a wolf," Cole said, his voice dropping an octave. "The curse transfers through an alpha's bite. The venom in my fangs can rewrite human DNA, transforming a mortal into a lycanthrope." A spark of hope ignited in Ruby's chest. She walked back to the glass coffee table. "Then do it. Bite me." Cole shook his head. His expression hardened into a stern, unyielding mask. "It is not a simple transaction. The transformation process requires agonizing pain. Your bones will break and reform. Your senses will magnify until the world feels like a physical assault on your mind. You will burn with a blistering fever for days." "I can handle pain," Ruby countered, her chin raised in defiance. "The pain is the least of the dangers," Cole warned. He pointed a finger at her. "The survival rate for a bitten human is a coin toss, 50%. The curse demands an iron will and a resilient body. If your system rejects the venom, the fever will stop your heart. You will die." Ruby froze. The blunt statistic hit her hard. A 50% chance of death. "Furthermore," Cole continued, relentless in his explanation, "the transfer requires specific conditions. I cannot bite you tonight. The curse only takes root under the direct light of a full moon. The lunar cycle peaks in 2 days." Cole stood up from the sofa. He ignored the throbbing ache of the silver poison in his arm. He closed the distance between them, stopping just inches away. He looked down at her, his amber eyes searching her face. "Cole, I must prepare my heart for the crushing possibility that she might walk away to stay safe." "I refuse to pressure you," Cole stated. He kept his hands at his sides. "I will not let my inner beast demand your submission. You must make this choice with a clear mind. Risking death to join my world is a monumental decision." Ruby looked at the fresh white gauze on his arm. He took a silver blade for her. He risked his own life without a second thought. Yet, he stood before her now, offering her the freedom to walk out the broken front door and never return. "I need time to think," Ruby said. The words felt heavy in her mouth. "Take the time," Cole agreed. He stepped back, creating a physical boundary between them. The guest room is yours. I will watch the door." Ruby turned and walked down the hallway. The penthouse felt massive and silent. She entered the guest room. Truffles snored on the edge of the mattress, a pink, oblivious lump of comfort. Ruby climbed into the bed, her mind spinning with statistics, lunar cycles, and the terrifying prospect of her own mortality. Chapter 19. Morning sunlight pierced the guest room blinds. Ruby opened her eyes. The heavy weight of the impending choice pressed down on her chest. 2 days until the full moon. She rolled out of bed, smoothing the wrinkles from her denim overalls. She slipped on her work boots. Truffles woke with a snort, demanding breakfast. Ruby scooped the miniature pig into her arms. She walked down the hallway. Cole sat on the floor near the entryway. His back rested against the heavy oak chair jamming the splintered door. He looked exhausted, but his amber eyes tracked her every movement. "I need to leave for a few hours," Ruby announced. Cole nodded. He stood, moving the heavy oak chair aside. "I will secure the perimeter while you are gone." Ruby took the elevator down to the underground garage. She strapped Truffles into the passenger seat of her pearlescent plum crossover SUV. She turned the key. The engine roared to life. She navigated the Silver Pine streets, heading toward the suburbs. Aunt Darla lived in a modest brick house surrounded by blooming rose bushes. Ruby parked the SUV in the driveway. She left Truffles in the fenced backyard to root through the grass and knocked on the front door. Darla opened the door, wearing a bright purple floral dress. "Ruby, what a pleasant surprise. Come inside." Ruby followed her aunt into the cozy kitchen. The aesthetic starkly contrasted with Cole's luxurious penthouse. Flowered wallpaper lined the room. Ceramic chickens sat on top of the cabinets. Darla poured 2 cups of hot tea and slid one across the wooden table. "You look terrible," Darla observed, taking a seat. "Dark circles under your eyes. Is that contractor job stressing you?" "The client is intense," Ruby deflected. She wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic mug. "I need your advice. General advice." Darla raised an eyebrow. "I excel at giving advice. Speak." "If you had to make a choice," Ruby started, choosing her words with caution. "A choice between living a safe, normal life or taking a massive risk for a chance at a perfect partnership, a risk that could end in absolute disaster. What would you do?" Darla took a sip of her tea. She set the cup down, her expression turning serious. "Safety is an illusion," Darla stated. "People avoid risks because they fear the pain of failure. But avoiding pain guarantees a life of regret. You sit in a quiet house, wondering about the paths you never took." Ruby traced the rim of her mug. "Even if the risk involves extreme physical danger." "Your uncle raced motorcycles," Darla recalled, a fond smile touching her lips. "I hated the danger, but I loved the man. I rode on the back of his bike because the thrill of being with him outweighed the fear of the road." "Ruby, I would rather risk everything for a chance at forever than live a half-life without him." Darla reached across the table, covering Ruby's hand with her own. "If the reward is true partnership, you take the leap. A half-lived life is a wasted life, Ruby. Do not let fear dictate your future." Ruby stared at her aunt. The fog in her mind cleared. The statistics and the warnings did not matter. She knew what she wanted. She finished her tea in one long gulp, stood up from the wooden chair, and walked out the door to collect her pig. Chapter 20. Ruby drove the pearlescent plum SUV back into the underground garage. She unbuckled Truffles, grabbed her notepad from the console, and marched toward the elevator. Her pulse pounded a steady, determined beat. She reached the penthouse level. The heavy oak chair scraped against the floorboards from the inside. The splintered door opened. Cole stood in the entryway. The dark circles under his amber eyes mirrored her own exhaustion. He wore a fresh gray t-shirt. The white gauze on his arm looked stark against the dark fabric. The silver burn continued to drain his reserves. "You returned," Cole noted, stepping aside to let her and the pig enter. Truffles trotted toward the living room, headed straight for the red Tupperware still sitting on the glass table. Ruby stopped in the center of the hallway. She turned to face the towering alpha. "I made my decision," Ruby announced. Her voice echoed in the cavernous space. Cole tensed, his broad shoulders hitched. He braced himself for rejection. "Tell me." "I want the bite," Ruby demanded. Cole froze. The air in the penthouse stalled. He shook his head, taking a step backward. "Ruby, you face a 50% mortality rate," Cole argued. His voice cracked with genuine panic. He began to pace the hardwood floor, his heavy boots thudding in a frantic rhythm. "If your body rejects the venom, I will watch you die. My own fangs will kill my mate." "Stop pacing," Ruby ordered. Cole stopped. He looked at her, his chest heaving with distressed breaths. "I refuse to live a half-life," Ruby stated. She closed the distance between them. She reached up, placing her soft hands on either side of his sharp jawline. She forced him to look down into her sage-green eyes. "I am strong," Ruby insisted, holding his gaze. "I swing hammers. I carry lumber. I blasted an intruder with a halogen light. I survived the terror of seeing your beast. Do not underestimate my resilience." Cole swallowed hard. The heat from her palms seeped into his skin, sending that undeniable spark of electricity racing through his nerves. "I cannot lose you," Cole whispered, dropping his formidable defenses. "You will not lose me," Ruby promised. She slid her thumbs across his cheekbones. "We wait for the full moon. You will give me the bite. We will face the fever together. You promised never to strip away my free will. This is my choice. Accept it." Cole, "I pray to the moon goddess to grant her the resilience to survive this." Cole let out a long, ragged breath. He raised his hands, resting them over hers. He leaned down, resting his forehead against hers. The scent of wild berries surrounded him, offering a fragile sense of peace amidst the looming storm. "I accept your choice," Cole conceded, his voice vibrating with absolute surrender. "We prepare for the moon." Chapter 21. The sun dipped below the silver pine skyline. Shadows stretched across the marble floor of the penthouse living room. The heavy oak chair remained wedged under the splintered front door. Security remained tight. The pack patrolled the streets below, ensuring no rogue threats approached the building. Cole stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows. He stared out at the gathering twilight. His broad chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm. The white gauze wrapped around his forearm offered a stark contrast to his gray t-shirt. The silver burn throbbed. The poison fought his natural healing, sending waves of dull fire up to his shoulder. He rolled his neck, trying to ease the tension pulling at his muscles. Ruby walked into the room. She stared at the empty red Tupperware container sitting next to the open plastic first aid kit on the glass coffee table. She wore the same faded denim overalls and coffee-stained work boots for 2 solid days. Grime coated her skin. Sawdust clung to her auburn hair. "I need a shower," Ruby announced. She placed her hands on her hips. "If I face a life-altering transformation tonight, I refuse to do it smelling like cheap coffee and drywall dust." Cole turned away from the glass. A ghost of a smile touched his sharp jawline. He walked toward the hallway, his canvas sneakers quiet on the hardwood. "The master bathroom has hot water. I placed a clean towel on the vanity. You can borrow a t-shirt and sweatpants from my dresser." Ruby offered a grateful nod. She headed toward the master bedroom. Truffles trotted right behind her. The miniature pig kept his snout close to her boots. He sensed the impending shift in the atmosphere. The animal refused to leave her side. Inside the bedroom, the new oak closet door stood firm on its hinges. Ruby stepped into the ensuite bathroom. She stripped off the heavy tool belt, the stained denim overalls, and the work boots. She stepped under the spray of the shower. The hot water cascaded over her soft curves, washing away the dirt and the lingering fear of the past 2 days. "Ruby, I brace my mind for the breaking of my own bones, hoping the pain offers a bridge to a better life." She scrubbed her skin until it turned pink. She turned the water off and wrapped the thick towel around her body. She stepped into the bedroom. She pulled a black t-shirt and soft gray sweatpants from Cole's dresser drawers. The garments dwarfed her frame. The fabric carried his signature scent, a subtle hint of wild berries and fresh rain. The familiar aroma calmed her racing pulse. She returned to the living room. Truffles followed her every step. The pig climbed onto the Italian leather sofa, curling into a protective ball on one of the cushions. Truffles let out a soft snort, his tiny hooves twitching in his sleep. Ruby smiled at the pig. She anchored her resolve. She would survive this night. She would claim her place in his world. Cole sat on the opposite end of the couch. He checked the white gauze on his arm. The edges of the fabric showed a faint yellow stain from the ointment. He looked up when Ruby entered. His amber eyes tracked her movements, lingering on the oversized clothes. "The sun is gone," Cole stated. His voice dropped, vibrating with a primal edge. "The moon rises in less than an hour." Ruby sat down next to him. She pulled her knees to her chest. The high price of the penthouse and the sweeping city views felt insignificant compared to the looming trial. She reached out, resting her hand on his uninjured thigh. The physical contact sent a jolt of electricity up her arm. "I am ready," Ruby promised. She traced the fabric of his sweatpants. Cole placed his large hand over hers. His body temperature felt like a furnace against her cool skin. "The fever will hit fast. Your body will fight the venom. You must focus on my voice. Do not let the pain pull you under." Ruby stared into his eyes. She saw the raw terror hiding behind his commanding presence. The alpha of the Silverpine Pack feared nothing in the physical world, yet the thought of losing her terrified him. She squeezed his fingers, offering a silent vow of resilience. They sat in the quiet penthouse, watching the sky turn a deep, endless black. Chapter 22. The Silverpine skyline disappeared into the night. A brilliant full moon crested the horizon. The celestial body cast a stark silver glow through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The pale light washed over the marble floor, illuminating the jagged claw marks on the ruined oak paneling. Cole stood up from the Italian leather sofa. He could not sit still. The lunar pull dragged at his blood. The curse in his veins demanded a release. He paced the length of the living room. His bare feet, he had discarded the canvas sneakers, padded against the stone. He rolled his broad shoulders. His muscles twitched under the fresh gray t-shirt. The ambient temperature in the penthouse spiked. Cole radiated heat. The silver burn on his forearm throbbed with a renewed, vicious ache, but the beast inside him ignored the injury. The animal only cared about the woman sitting on the couch. Ruby watched him pace. She kept her hands folded in her lap. The oversized black t-shirt hung loose on her frame. The moonlight caught the auburn strands of her damp hair. She remained silent, giving him space to fight his internal battle. Cole stopped near the glass coffee table. He stared at the red Tupperware and the open plastic first aid kit. His amber eyes shifted. The pupils dilated, bleeding out the natural color until a bright, unnatural gold consumed his irises. The alpha beast scratched at the surface of his mind. "Cole, the pure trust she places in my hands humbles my very soul, grounding the beast before it consumes me." He turned his head, locking his glowing gaze on Ruby. A low, vibrating growl rumbled deep in his chest. The sound lacked aggression. It conveyed pure possessiveness. The beast recognized its mate. The beast wanted to claim her. Ruby did not shrink away. The crippling fear from the bathroom incident did not return. She understood the creature now. She recognized the fierce protector hiding beneath the fangs and the claws. She stood up from the leather sofa. Truffles shifted on the cushions, offering a sleepy grunt before settling back down. Ruby stepped into the pool of moonlight. The silver beams illuminated her soft features and her sage-green eyes. She closed the distance between them. She stopped inches from his towering frame. "Cole," Ruby whispered. Her voice cut through the heavy silence. Cole squeezed his eyes shut. His jaw ticked. He fought the overwhelming urge to crush her against his chest. "My control is slipping. The moon demands the shift. The beast demands you." "I am right here," Ruby promised. She reached up, resting her palms against his rigid chest. Her cool skin met the furnace heat of his body. The undeniable spark of electricity jumped between them, cementing the bond. Cole opened his eyes. The glowing gold remained, but the frantic energy settled. Her touch acted like a heavy anchor in a raging storm. He reached up with his uninjured arm, weaving his thick fingers through her damp auburn hair. He tilted her head back, exposing the soft curve of her neck. The pulse jumping in her throat called to him. The life force rushing through her veins promised a lasting connection. He brushed his thumb across her cheekbone. The rough calluses on his skin offered a stark contrast to her softness. "If you want to stop, tell me now," Cole demanded. His voice carried a harsh, rasping quality. "Once my fangs pierce your skin, the venom transfers. There is no cure. There is no going back to your human life." Ruby held his gaze. She thought about her quiet, lonely apartment. She thought about Aunt Darla's advice. She stared at the fierce alpha who terrified the criminal underworld, but chose to rock a miniature pig to sleep. She made her choice. "I do not want to go back," Ruby stated. Her voice held zero hesitation. "I want to move forward with you." Cole released a shuddering breath. The last of his walls crumbled into dust. He swept his uninjured arm around her waist, pulling her flush against his chest. He lowered his head, his lips hovering inches from hers. The heavy scent of wild berries surrounded them, signaling the end of her old life and the beginning of the ritual. She leaned into his embrace. The steady rhythm of his heart pounded against her chest like a war drum. The penthouse felt isolated from the rest of the world. Tonight, only the two of them existed under the watchful eye of the moon. Chapter 23. Cole captured her lips. The kiss started with a desperate, crushing intensity. The raw power of the alpha poured into the contact. Ruby gasped, opening her mouth to the heat. A jolt of pure fire raced down her spine. The chemistry between them ignited, burning away the remaining shadows in the penthouse. Cole deepened the kiss. His tongue swept across her bottom lip, tasting the sweet, natural essence of her skin. He kept his injured forearm hovering away from her body, protecting the sensitive white gauze from the friction. His uninjured arm banded around her waist, lifting her feet off the marble floor. Ruby wrapped her arms around his thick neck. She tangled her fingers into his dark, unruly hair. The sheer size of the man made her feel secure, sheltered from the dangers of the world. He carried her down the hallway, never breaking the kiss. His heavy boots kicked the master bedroom door wide open. The shattered remains of the custom walk-in closet served as a distant memory. The new oak door stood straight and flush against the frame. Moonlight poured through the bedroom windows, casting a silver glow across the plush rug and the large mattress. Cole set her down beside the bed. He pulled back, his chest heaving with ragged breaths. His golden eyes locked onto her face, tracking every micro-expression. He searched for any sign of hesitation or fear. He found nothing but unwavering devotion staring back at him. "Ruby." Held securely in his strong arms, "I feel cherished and loved." Ruby reached out, her fingers catching the hem of his gray t-shirt. She pulled the fabric up, dragging it over his broad shoulders and tossing it onto the floor. His bare chest revealed a landscape of rigid muscle and thick scars from past battles. The heat radiating from his skin rivaled an open furnace. She traced the edge of a scar near his ribs. He sucked in a sharp breath at her gentle touch. Cole reached for the oversized black t-shirt she wore. He pulled it over her head. The soft gray sweatpants followed, joining the discarded clothing on the rug. He took a step back, his glowing eyes raking over her soft curves bathed in the lunar light. A low, appreciative rumble vibrated in his throat. He pulled her onto the mattress. The bed dipped under his heavy frame. He hovered over her, caging her body with his uninjured arm and his knees. He mapped the contours of her face with feather-light kisses. He kissed her jaw, her temples, and the soft skin behind her ear. His fangs grazed her neck, sending a sharp thrill of anticipation through her veins. The transition from fierce protector to tender lover flowed with ease. He worshipped every inch of her skin. His rough, calloused hands smoothed over her hips, igniting a trail of fire wherever they touched. Ruby arched into his touch, her hands exploring the hard planes of his back. The friction between them escalated into a breathless rhythm. Her pulse hammered a frantic beat, a stark contrast to the steady, powerful thud of his own heart. The air grew thick and heavy, charged with the electric current of the mate bond. Every brush of his skin sent a new wave of intoxicating warmth cascading through her system. She felt valued and seen in a way she never experienced in her old, quiet life. The walls she spent years building to protect her independence crumbled into nothing. He did not want to conquer her. He wanted to stand beside her. The realization brought tears of pure joy to her sage-green eyes. She pulled his face down, capturing his lips in a slow, searing kiss that communicated all the words she could not speak. Cole whispered words of praise against her skin. He called her brave. He called her beautiful. He claimed her as his equal, tearing down the final barriers between the human contractor and the werewolf alpha. Ruby surrendered her heart whole. She gave herself over to the wild, consuming passion, matching his fierce energy with her own unwavering strength. The bond between them clicked right into place, solidifying the emotional connection before the physical transformation even began. Chapter 24. The intensity inside the master bedroom reached a breaking point. The silver moonlight blanketed the tangled sheets. Ruby clung to Cole's broad shoulders. Her breath hitched, escaping her lips in a series of sharp, desperate gasps. The physical connection between them deepened, merging their souls into a single, undeniable force. She felt the raw power of the alpha humming right beneath his skin, vibrating in harmony with her racing pulse. Cole shifted his weight, rising above her. The muscles in his back coiled tight with tension. Sweat slicked his chest, glistening under the lunar glow. His amber eyes blazed with blinding gold light. The human element vanished from his gaze, leaving only the fierce, possessive beast staring down at his mate. The time arrived. The lunar cycle peaked in the night sky. Cole let out a deep, rumbling growl that shook the bed frame. He lowered his head, burying his face into the crook of her neck. He inhaled her scent of wild berries and fresh rain one final time. His lips brushed against the soft curve of her shoulder. "Mine," Cole whispered against her skin, his voice a lethal rasp. He opened his jaws, his sharp fangs extended, gleaming in the dark. He clamped his mouth over the juncture of her shoulder and neck. He sank his teeth deep into her flesh. A sharp, piercing cry erupted from Ruby's throat. The pain hit her like a heavy hammer strike. The fangs tore through her skin, breaking the barrier between the human world and the lycanthrope curse. Cole clamped his uninjured hand over her waist, holding her steady against the mattress. He pushed the thick venom from his glands into her bloodstream. The transfer took only a few seconds, but the sensation stretched into eternity. The venom felt like liquid lead entering her veins. I pull her tight against my chest, terrified the bite will reject her fragile system. He pulled his fangs free. A few drops of dark crimson blood welled at the puncture marks. Cole was quick to lick the wound, his saliva carrying natural coagulants that sealed the broken skin. The bleeding stopped, leaving behind two distinct, lasting scars. The mark of the alpha. Ruby collapsed back against the pillows. Her vision blurred. A strange, unnatural heat bloomed in the center of her chest. The warmth spread outward, creeping down her arms and legs. Within seconds, the heat escalated into a blazing inferno. The fever hit her like a runaway train. Ruby gasped for air. Her skin flushed a deep, alarming red. Sweat beaded on her forehead. The venom waged a brutal war against her human DNA, breaking down her cellular structure to rebuild it from the ground up. Her body shook with violent tremors. Her joints ached, a bone-deep throb that signaled the start of the physiological changes. Cole moved fast. He rolled off the mattress, grabbing the discarded black t-shirt from the plush rug. He wiped the sweat from her face. He touched her cheek. Her skin felt like a hot stove. The temperature spiked far beyond a normal human fever. "Ruby!" Cole called out, his voice sharp with rising panic. "Look at me. Focus on my voice." Ruby tried to open her eyes, but her eyelids felt like heavy lead weights. The world spun in dizzying circles. The pain in her bones intensified, a sharp, cracking pressure that threatened to tear her apart from the inside. She let out a whimpering groan, curling into a tight ball on the mattress. Cole cursed. He forgot about his own pain. He ignored the throbbing silver burn wrapped in the white gauze. He pulled the thick duvet over her trembling body, tucking the edges tight to trap the heat. The transformation required time. The venom needed to burn away her mortal frailties. He knew the biological process, but watching the woman he loved suffer through the agony tore his heart into pieces. He climbed back onto the bed. He pulled her burning body against his chest, wrapped his arms around her to act as a physical anchor. He buried his face in her damp auburn hair, whispering prayers to the moon goddess. The long, grueling battle for her life had begun. Chapter 25. The silver moonlight faded from the master bedroom, replaced by the gray dawn of the first day. Ruby lay trapped under the thick duvet. The venom waged a brutal war inside her veins. A blistering heat radiated from her skin, turning the mattress into an oven. She thrashed against the pillows, tangling her legs in the cotton sheets. Her auburn hair clung to her face in wet, heavy strands. Cole sat on the edge of the bed. He refused to sleep. He pulled the thick duvet back from her trembling body to help the heat escape. He walked into the ensuite bathroom, his bare feet silent against the tile. He turned the metal faucet, letting the cold water run over the dark fabric of his own discarded shirt. He wrung the cotton out, mindful of the white gauze wrapping his right forearm. The silver burn throbbed with a dull, relentless fire, but he shoved the pain aside. His mate required all his focus. He returned to the bedroom and pressed the damp shirt against her flushed forehead. The water hissed, evaporating almost upon contact with her burning flesh. Ruby let out a low, agonizing whimper. The sound hit Cole like a physical blow to the stomach. Hours bled into the afternoon. The penthouse remained silent, save for the hum of the air conditioning. The heavy oak chair still jammed the splintered front door down the hall. Truffles, the miniature pig, trotted into the bedroom once, offering a concerned snort before retreating to the safety of the living room sofa. Cole maintained his vigil. He held her hand, tracking the pulse jumping in her wrist. The rhythm raced like a wild horse. The venom dismantled her human cellular structure, forcing her immune system into overdrive. Cole, if she does not wake up, I will tear this city apart with my bare hands. As the sun sank below the silver pine skyline, the rhythm of her pulse changed. The frantic beat staggered. It slowed to a terrifying crawl. Cole leaned forward. The air in his lungs vanished. He pressed his ear against her sternum. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. Her chest remained still. A suffocating dread clamped down on his throat. He raised his hands, preparing to start chest compressions. The 50% mortality rate mocked him from the shadows of the room. He braced his palms over her heart. A sudden, thunderous boom echoed in his ears. Ruby gasped, her back arching off the mattress. Her heart restarted with a violent jolt. It beat with a new, feral strength, thudding against her ribs with the power of a war drum. The human contractor was fading. The wolf was taking root. Cole let out a ragged breath, pressing his forehead against the mattress. The battle continued, but she held her ground. Chapter 26. Day 2 arrived with a brutal assault on Ruby's mind. The fever still burned, but a new torture joined the inferno. Pain radiated from the marrow of her bones. It felt like invisible hands snapping her skeleton apart and forcing the pieces back together into strange, rigid shapes. A cry escaped her cracked lips. She opened her eyes. The morning sunlight stabbing through the windows felt like physical knives driving into her skull. "Close your eyes," a rough voice commanded from the shadows. The sound hit her eardrums like a crashing wave. Every noise in the world amplified. She heard the low hum of the refrigerator in the unfinished kitchen. She heard the wind slapping against the glass of the penthouse windows. She heard the scuff of tiny hooves on the marble floor 2 rooms away. Down on the street, the screech of tires echoed with agonizing clarity. She squeezed her eyes shut, dragging her hands over her ears. The sensory input threatened to break her sanity. The scent of dust motes, the smell of the sterile saline from the first aid kit, and the metallic tang of Cole's healing burn flooded her nose. It was too much. Cole shifted on the bed. He pressed his calloused palm against her cheek, blocking out the light. "Breathe," Cole instructed. His tone lacked the alpha command, offering only a steady, grounding anchor. "The venom rewires your nerves. The world will feel loud. Do not fight the current. Ride the wave." I focused solely on the steady cadence of his voice to survive the blinding pain. She latched onto the vibration of his chest. He pulled her against his side, letting her use his towering frame as a shield. She felt the rough texture of the gauze wrapping his arm. She buried her face into the crook of his neck, breathing in the familiar scent of rain and wild berries. Her muscles spasmed, her jaw popped, aching with a deep throb as the bone density thickened. Her spine contorted, fighting the human limits of her anatomy. Cole murmured old pack litanies, keeping his hands stroked over her hair. He narrated the process, warning her before the next wave of pain hit. He acted as her tether to reality. He refused to let her slip into the void. When the bone-breaking ache reached its peak, Ruby bit down hard on his shoulder, riding out the agony until her exhausted body finally dragged her back into unconsciousness. Chapter 27. The third morning broke over the city. The blistering heat radiating from Ruby's skin vanished. The violent tremors ceased. The thick duvet lay kicked aside, exposing her sweat-slicked body to the cool air of the room. Cole sat in the vanity chair, dragged close to the edge of the bed. Dark circles painted the skin under his amber eyes. His posture sagged, stripped of his usual imposing energy. The silver burn on his arm ached, demanding proper rest, but he refused to leave his post. Ruby stirred. Her chest rose and fell in a slow, rhythmic pattern. The brutal ache receded, leaving behind a humming electric current in her veins. She flexed her fingers. Her joints felt different. They coiled with a raw, undeniable potential. She opened her eyes. Cole stopped breathing. He gripped the wooden arms of the vanity chair. Ruby blinked against the morning light. The stabbing pain was gone. The world snapped into crystal-clear focus. She could see the intricate grain of the new oak closet door across the room. She could hear the steady, calm thud of Cole's heart. She pushed herself up, pulling the white cotton sheet over her chest. The lingering fragility of her human body was gone. She felt solid. She felt unbreakable. Ruby. An incredible raw power hums right beneath the surface of my skin, begging to be let out. Cole let out a ragged sigh of relief. He dragged a hand through his unruly dark hair. "You survived the venom." Ruby swung her legs over the edge of the mattress. She stood up. Her balance felt flawless. She walked past the ruined clothes on the floor and headed straight for the ensuite bathroom. She stopped in front of the vanity mirror. Her reflection stared back at her. Her auburn hair hung in wild tangles around her shoulders. Her soft curves remained, but her posture held a new, lethal grace. The changes went deeper than muscle and bone. She met her own gaze in the glass. The familiar sage-green irises were gone. Bright, piercing gold stared back at her. She touched her cheek. The reflection mirrored the movement. She turned back toward the bedroom. Cole stood in the doorway, his broad frame filling the space. The alpha looked at his Luna, his chest heaving with undisguised pride. Ruby smiled, a genuine expression that chased the last of the shadows from the penthouse. She crossed the room and wrapped her arms around his neck, sealing her place in his world. Chapter 28. The penthouse felt confining. The wolf inside Ruby paced her mind, demanding open space. Cole understood the instinct. He tossed her a fresh pair of gray sweatpants and a t-shirt from his drawers, pulling a black shirt over his own head. They walked past the splintered front entryway, leaving the heavy oak chair in place, and rode the elevator down to the garage. Ruby grabbed her coffee-stained work boots from the bathroom floor, sliding them onto her feet. They bypassed her pearlescent plum SUV. Cole unlocked the midnight blue Grand Tourer. They drove through the city streets, heading toward the dense silver pine forests on the outskirts of town. Cole parked near a secluded trailhead. The air smelled of pine needles and damp earth. "Let the beast step forward," Cole instructed, standing near the tree line. "Do not hold it back." Ruby closed her eyes. She reached for the wild energy humming in her chest. The shift hit her. Bones cracked and reshaped. The transition brought a sharp sting, but the raw power muted the discomfort. Fur sprouted across her skin, thick and russet red, matching the shade of her auburn hair. Her jaw elongated into a snout. She dropped to all fours. A russet wolf stood in the clearing, shaking dirt from her coat. She possessed a leaner build than Cole's towering black wolf, built for speed and agility rather than brute force. Cole stripped his shirt, ignoring the sting of his healing silver burn, and let his own bones break. The towering black wolf emerged from the shadows. He nudged her shoulder with his wet nose. They ran. They tore through the underbrush, their paws silent against the forest floor. Ruby reveled in the speed. Her muscles worked in perfect harmony. She matched his pace stride for stride, leaping over fallen logs and dodging thick tree trunks. They spent hours chasing the wind, solidifying their pack bond under the canopy of leaves. As the sun began to set, they shifted back, dressed, and drove back to the city. They walked into the penthouse. The jagged claw marks on the living room wall felt like a memory from a different lifetime. "Knowing she is safe and whole, my pack and my heart are finally complete." A soft snore drifted from the center of the room. They looked down. Truffles, the miniature pig, lay curled in a tight pink ball, fast asleep inside Cole's unchewed right shoe. Ruby laughed, a bright, clear sound that filled the room. Cole shook his head, a genuine smile breaking across his sharp jawline. The towering alpha wrapped his uninjured arm around his Luna, ready to face whatever chaos the world, and the pig, brought them next. The end. Quick favor, don't go anywhere yet. If you thought Ruby was brave for shoving a dangerous alpha into a walk-in closet, wait until you meet the heroine in this next story on your screen. You have to hear this disaster unfold. Click the video on your screen right now. It is completely unhinged.